Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Kevin. Welcome to Creative Table. I'm joined here today by my business partner, Andy, and the special guest of honor from a land far, far away. We have Mr. Craig Johnson from Matchstic.
Great
Welcome,
to be here.
Craig. Yeah, man. Glad to see you and have you in the house here with us today. For those of you who may or may not have, I don't know, if you've followed us before, a few years ago, we launched a show, Creative Table Season 1, and Craig was the one to kick that off for us back in the day. I actually have a clip of it here I'll bring up. But yeah, encourage you, if you haven't seen the episode, to check it out. Craig dropped an incredible amount of wisdom and insights from across business, branding, all the things. Check that out when you can. But yeah, thanks for coming back and helping us, in this new format we've got going on here, Craig.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Just the fact that he came back is, I think, a plus.
It's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
He just forgot his mug. He came back to get it.
He signed a 3-year agreement he didn't even remember doing.
Yeah.
That worked out well.
It was in the fine print.
Sucker. So, gosh, man, I want to give everyone a little context for who you are. And I could say, my perspective about that, but I'm going to flip that around and just say, tell the audience, for those who may not know who you are, what you do, why it matters.
Yeah, sure. So, Craig Johnson, I guess if I'm known for anything, it's being the co-founder of Matchstic, which is a branding firm that I am used to saying based in Atlanta, but really we're fully distributed. We have a mailing address in Atlanta, I guess, but our team now is all spread out. But my whole career, I've been on the business side of a creative industry. So I started in the music business, and I was kind of managing rock bands and doing that, and then switched industries to a different type of creative professional. And really for the last 21 years, I've been building and growing and maintaining Matchstic.
Okay. And over the years, you mentioned you're fully distributed now. You started out, talk about that. How long has it been?
Since what? Since
you started, you launched?
21 years.
Man,
Ooh.
yeah.
Man, that's awesome.
And you started out from humble beginnings in a garage somewhere like Steve Jobs, or in a
yeah.
there was a house at some point, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. We had this little house that a lot of people would come to and visit, and
was it
a lot
on
of
a
people
prairie?
remember. No, it was across the street from a Subway on Moreland Avenue, and we used to play. Blimpie. We called it Blimpie Frogger. Because there was Moreland is like a state highway, and there's like four lanes, and like semis were going down there.
I used to live in Reynoldstown, and that is right off that area.
Yeah,
there's no joke. Yeah.
Moreland. So we played Blimpie Frogger to head over to.
Craig's like, we lost a lot of employees those first years.
Thankfully none. Though there was a bad car accident once in our front yard. Anyway,
dude, really? So funny story. When I first moved to Atlanta, in Reynoldstown, right off of Moreland there. My first experience was with what I later learned was the ghetto bird. There was like a shirt in this store that had this helicopter. It said, "Run, run, run from the ghetto bird." I'm like, what's that? But I woke up one morning and there was like this. I was like, what in the world was that? And then 5-10 seconds later, and I was like, what? And I went outside and there's a black police helicopter hovering like what felt like 100 feet off of the rooftops, because there had been a police chase, and my roommates just came back in. They're like, yeah, there's a car on fire down here, crashing into the telephone pole, and the dude ran by on foot, and then like a few seconds later, 6 officers chased. I was like, that was
crazy.
My exposure. You said the car crash happened in your...
Yeah, we had all sorts of fun things happen.
Yeah,
we had
Atlanta's
our car
fun.
stolen right outside of the house.
What? Wow.
We had our power cut off one time in the middle of a sales meeting in the house. So
we had a shoot one time where a service van hit the pole in front of the Airbnb we were renting.
Dude, I forgot about that.
And the power dropped. Then they got it back up and they said, we're going to have people here to redo it because it was a mess. So you got 2 hours before we cut power, and we weren't done shooting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't remember how we finished that. Like
barely.
Yeah. Like what did we do?
You have a day. Deadlines are good things.
We hustled.
Deadlines.
At that shot. Yeah.
Yes.
Parkinson's law, right? Work expands to the time allotted to get it done.
Is that what that law is? I forgot which law that was.
Yeah.
I'm familiar
Thanks
with
for
it.
joining us for this episode of Craig dropped the nugget. That's the nugget we were looking for.
That's all the time we have for today.
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
But that was actually our third office. The first 2 offices were we just rented a little space from my previous employer where Blake and I met was in the music business, and we just rented an office or two from them, and then we eventually moved into that house. And
Okay. Awesome. And then down the street to the
And then
warehouse.
And then we moved down the street, to this really cool
Is
kind
it
of
like a
mixed
fire
use.
station, or do y'all just have that pole put in there? Didn't you have?
No, we just had that put in there.
That was
'cause
awesome.
It was,
Fireman's pole.
yeah.
Dang, we need
Yeah.
a fireman's pole.
Dude, we need a second story, and then we need,
Oh, that'd be awesome.
we talked about putting a zip line or something here.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
My kids thought it was
Yeah.
fun.
That's cool.
And then really COVID is what,
Yeah.
we were all like, 2 months to flatten the curve, and then we're going to go back into or 2 weeks. No, 2
2
weeks.
weeks?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Turned into
20 years?
turned into 2 months, turned into August,
Yeah.
turned into maybe we need to hire somebody, and this person's an hour away. Can we do that? Well, we'll try that,
Mhm.
And then somebody was like really out of state, and we're like, we'll tell them that we'll try it for a year and see how. And I mean, then everybody we hired after that, it was just like
Mhm.
happened real fast.
I remember one of the times we met, for breakfast or lunch, like something came up about remote work. I don't remember why, but I remember at that time, pre-COVID, I feel like I remember you feeling like, I want to keep the team in the room together. Like I could be wrong, but I feel like
Probably, I
that
don't remember, but I'm
transition-
sure.
Yeah, I just came away thinking, no, that's interesting. Yeah, Craig feels like that synergy in the room is important.
Yeah.
Was my takeaway. And I'm wondering, what was it like was that a hard mental, hurdle to get over that? Or was it like, you're pressed because of COVID, you got to do it, what you got to do? Or what was
Yeah,
that
I mean,
like?
I think, there's a lot of trends, I think, that COVID, fast forwarded really fast, really quickly.
Yeah.
Just like Zoom meetings being the one, we never had face, like we literally would pull up a deck and then do and then have a conference call line. And we were like, how did we ever present things without seeing people's faces? We were talking about this recently.
Yeah.
Like you can't, how do you
wild.
read the room?
Right. Exactly.
But we would just all huddle around the conference table while we were like on our laptop, and the client was in another city or whatever. Plus we had a rule pre-COVID that like we have to meet in person if we're going to work together. We have to kick off in person. Well, then COVID forced you to say, well, maybe we don't have to. We're like, we have to come visit. We're like, well, we don't have any options, so we'll try it. And then we try it. And we're like, well, that works pretty good. And the pendulum has definitely swung back where there's a lot more in-person stuff now than there was 5 years ago. But
do you feel like it changed your hiring process in the sense of like top of the list is highly self-motivated, or self-starter versus where that might have been lower in the list if you're in-house and you're looking at talent more than.
Well, I mean,
how
I've
did that
always
factor?
had this theory, once my my dad came down to my office, and my dad's old school, and I'm old enough where I feel like I'm old school now, but like he would say, well, where are all the people? I'm like, well, they work at their house. He's like, well, how do you know they're working? And I looked at him, I said, Dad, how do you know people at your office are working? He's like, well, yeah, good point. I don't know. I just kind of believe they are if I can see them.
Yeah.
He's like, I've got cameras in all their offices.
Yeah,
they don't know
no,
about.
of course he doesn't.
No.
But there's, I tend to be biased towards trust and then, give me a reason not to, as opposed to the opposite. But what it really did was allowed us to, instead of saying we have to find talent that lives in Atlanta or is willing to move to Atlanta. And then there were several people that in years past, we'd pay for their moving expenses and things to move back, say, hey, where is the best? Let's just find the best talent in the United States. The United States is a big place, a lot of talented people.
Yep.
And so, we have almost as many people in New York City as are in Atlanta now, which is just totally
That's
weird.
wild,
And
yeah.
several of them were like, I never imagined that I would work for a company out of Atlanta, but this is great.
Mm-hmm. It seems like that's a book coming up for you guys. How to transition to fully distributed
Well,
business and maintain your culture and
Yeah.
processes and, keep trucking.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of companies have figured it out, and a lot of companies are trying to go back. Where I think the real loss is for people that are really early in their career, like your first job. Because
Yeah.
I realized when my first job, I would, what do? You watch people, you look for like clues about how do things work and how do I need to act. And you don't get much of that. I have a niece who's a graphic designer, and she would not apply to a single job out of college that was going to be remote, which I have a lot of respect for, and I'm like, my boss in my first job, he and I like kind of half shared an office for about 2 years. And I just sat there, and he was on the phone all the time, wheeling and dealing all the time, and we had these, he'd like wink at me at times, things he was doing. And I was like, the value of just being able to listen to him, have conversations with people and navigate situations was massive. And I think that there is there's a definite, and I don't know if I have an answer for it for our business, but there's a loss for people that are early in their career, and how do they learn how to be a professional?
Yeah, I feel like those soft skills are more important than ever today in terms of like emotional intelligence, knowing how to lead yourself, know yourself to lead yourself, all those things.
Yeah, which we do a lot of training on those soft skills. In fact, one of our VP of operations is like certified, trained in this whole program that teaches people, all the EQ side and understanding who you are and how do you interact with other people, how do you communicate, which that's super important.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned COVID, of course. I know that was pivotal for everyone. Kind of the impetus for the Creative Table Season 1. How now that you're fully distributed, you've been through the ups and downs, small to large, in-house, out of house, et cetera, remote. You guys are now kind of claiming ownership of this idea of radically relevant brands and being a brand that sustains over the course of any kind of economy or fallback or all of those things. And it's very interesting to me, and I would assume anyone who's watching as well. I want to park there and talk a little bit about things that you've learned, things that you realize you wish you knew earlier, or I don't know, things you're still working on in terms of insights or best practices around how do you sustain a business when yesterday was better than today, et cetera, or what is the uncertainty of tomorrow, liminal space, all of those things.
Well, I mean, I can go a lot of directions with that, but I think ultimately for us, it's just about, what's in front of you and what's changing, and trying to be one of our guiding principles is be curious. How do we continually be curious? Push to get better is another one of our guiding principles. Those things are super important to understand, because the world is going to change all around us. The world continues to change all around us. And how do we be open to the ideas of like, what does it take to be successful? And how do we, I had two clients in the last 2 weeks who have mandates from their executive team to make sure they're implementing AI in everything they're doing. So, we can sit around and a lot of folks in our industry are like, it's horrible. It's just taking jobs. And it's like, listen, the world is going that way. The question is not, does this matter or is this impactful? The question is, how are we going to engage with this and how are we going to use it? And that's the great thing about, just business and life and commerce is you're forced to figure it out, because you're constantly trying to figure out how to stay relevant, to your point, right? And that's what the whole idea of radically relevant is about, the idea that you got to be radically different than the competition, but you got to be incredibly relevant to your audience. And so that's a big filter for which I see a lot of things in the world. And it's really, really basic, right? Like you're telling me I have to implement AI. So to stay relevant, I got to do that, right? But how am I going to do it in a way that's different than what other people are doing? Because if I'm just copying everybody, then, then that's when you go to lowest common denominator, lowest price.
Right. It does seem to spiral quickly if you're not careful in that regard. But what comes to mind for me is this idea of like, this dichotomy of like, how do you focus in excellence on what you are known for and good at, but at the same time measure and keep an eye out for like, here's this new thing. Yeah. And do we need to dive into that and spend time on that? Or is that just a passing, there's, especially now with AI, something new I feel like comes out every day or every week at least. Yeah. And it's like, you can chase all those shiny objects, but, and lose yourself, or you can stay focused like, Nehemiah style. I'm building a wall, I can't come down. I'm sitting here. I'm not going to be distracted by these things. Yeah. But I will investigate it appropriately in our own time. I don't know, are you guys early adopters of that, or do you have like a little, skunk works team over here, R&D, like keeping the pulse on all that, or do you kind of, if the noise is loud enough from the client side, then you'll go, okay, we'll look at it.
Everything to me goes back to our job is to keep clients happy and do work that is impactful for them. And so, what are the things that they need? And some clients are saying, hey, my executive doesn't even know what this means, but they're telling me I have to do this. So how do we do it? So how do I help them in that situation? And then you have, like I have a lot of question marks about like what there are aspects of AI that are going to make certain things, that are going to commoditize certain things. And so how do I try to continue to learn and understand what's going to become a commodity, and how do I leverage that as a commodity? And then how do I understand what we need to do to differentiate from that commodity? I always say you either got to run to the most commoditized thing as possible, or you got to go complete opposite direction and say, what is the thing that you cannot commoditize, that you can charge a whole lot of money for, and how do we move in that direction? So a lot of it, I think, is just being curious and being open and having a lot of conversation and finding out what works, like what are the bright spots? What are we seeing? Because sometimes we can have, I'm not real big on, sitting around and building something and then going and trying to sell it to people. I mean, I guess that's a product business and we're a service business, but clients will tell me what's important to them, right? And
I was wondering that, like, are you proactive with it? Like, hey, you guys, we're going to do this new thing, or is it more responsive and reactive, where it's like the client says, my boss is making me do this, I don't even know what it is, and then you're like, okay, we can help you with that.
I mean, it has to be a little bit of both, but but ultimately, it's about meeting them where they are, and figuring out, again, we can all like I think back to, I started my career in the music business, and the year that I started the music business was the year that Napster came out. And so everybody was just, freewheeling, downloading whatever music you want. And I used to literally have like a budget of I could buy one CD a week. And I was just always going out, and that's what I could spend. And all of a sudden you had all this, I can get whatever I want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the music industry, there was part of people in the music industry that was responding to that by suing 13-year-olds for downloading music. And then you had Steve Jobs that said, maybe people aren't trying to steal. Maybe they just want an easy way to get something. Let me put something together that allows them to pay for this. Mm-hmm. And like riding that wave, not saying, this is whole bad, let's shut it down, make sure people are still only buying CDs in stores, versus saying, let's figure out where this is going and let's get ahead of it. So I think it was really interesting doing that. I mean, when I literally studied, I got a music business degree, and, watching this, I felt like when I started the music business, like I'm watching this whole industry like unravel before my eyes, like everything they taught me about how radio works and how retail works. And I'm like, this is all changing,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with trends like AI, I mean, more often than not, like some things are going to be completely changed. Some things are probably not going to change that much. I think a lot of what we do is help negotiate decisions and help people gain alignment. And, that's the difference between a good, person who can be a good graphic designer or videographer, or somebody who is the top of their industry, is somebody who is helping people make decisions and helping people move towards what's going to help them accomplish, not just how to navigate the new widget of the day.
Yeah. Well said. I want to go back to what you mentioned a few moments ago regarding this idea that you can focus in on one thing, and I forget how you phrased it, charge a lot for it. That whole idea of like, I can do this. How did you say it?
Well, just that you can.
I want to put some practical shape around it because I want to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well,
because speaking of AI is, they say, you hear like the guy from Fiverr just sent the email, right? The CEO talking about, that'll date when we recorded this. The guy talking about, hey, AI is coming for your jobs. Everyone, pay attention. But we have opportunity in front of us as well. And there are things like, excuse me, meaning and humanity can never be replaced.
Right.
Those higher level concepts by AI. So, like, where do you see that in your world, and perhaps translate that for business leaders watching with regards to where they should focus and how that plays into their business model in terms of what they can charge versus like being commoditized by, the machine.
Yeah. Well, again, if I think back to our history, we started our business in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Mid 2000s was when this whole, like when Fiverr didn't exist then, but things started to come out, online crowdsourcing.
Yep.
And so many people were pushing back saying like, this is terrible. People aren't valuing what we're doing. And we were just a design firm at the time. And I literally read this article on a plane in Harvard Business Review, like around that time, because I was feeling this. Like at the time, literally, we were designing every little, thing that someone needed designed. I was designing a punch card for a coffee shop, right? Like, does anybody think they're going to spend much money paying for that nowadays? No, not at all.
Right.
But at the time, it was like, well, somebody's going to do this for, $20 on 99 designs. And I used to charge $300 for it, and everybody was freaking out. And that's when I said, either I got to figure out how to do this cheaper than, the crowdsourcing websites, or I got to find something that's valuable that they can't do that I can charge a lot more money for. And so I just, at the time, that's how we ultimately kind of settled on brand, focusing on brand identity. And it was going through some of the Jim Collins, hedgehog of like, what can you be best in the world at? Where can you make good money, and where's your passion lie? And, because everybody at the time was running towards digital and social. Facebook was only like a year old when we were kind of repositioning as branding. And so it felt very much like everybody's running this direction. We're going to try to run this direction. And it was it's not like we did a bunch of research on it. It was a little bit of a gut, but then you also try things, right? And you test it and you have conversations, and it works, and it works again, and it works again. And then you say, well, can I raise the price 10% next time? And will they still buy? Yeah. Okay. Let me try that again, and just continuing to test things. That's the one nice thing about project work is you can test things with every new client that comes along.
Right.
You're like, hey, we have this idea about how to change our process. Well, let's do it on the next client. Hey, we think we didn't charge enough for this, or, and then you keep pushing price. And there was a season where I kept pushing. And then all of a sudden started getting knocked back down. I started getting feedback like, hey, your bid was double the next closest, and it's like, okay, that's not good.
That's because it's twice as good.
Yeah. I always say the most expensive bid typically works as long as you're no more than like 25%, over the next closest.
Say that again. That was good. No.
I feel like when I'm not the high bidder, I usually don't win, because there's a value there, right? Like when you buy headphones, you're like, I want the really nice ones, right? And if some are half the price, you're like, it's probably half the price for a reason. So I'm going to get those other ones.
When I hear you talking about finding that thing, and it reminds me of like what we wrestle with, companies are always shopping in the red ocean because that's what they know. And, if we come out with something like Atlas Interactive, that's more of a blue ocean, nobody's doing it, nobody understands it, they haven't seen it.
Yeah.
They can get the value, if they investigate it, but it's a hard sell because it's like, we shop in the red ocean. We don't look. So how do you make the thing that's in the blue ocean more in the purple ocean?
Well, yeah. My version of red ocean, blue ocean is I often talk about, do they already have a budget line item for this? And I'm just trying to say, hey, spend that with me. Or is this something that they have never budgeted for, and I'm trying to get them create a totally new budget item? That's blue ocean, but that's also a really big challenge.
It's really difficult
to say you should spend money on something you've never thought about spending money on before, and it's going to be really valuable. Even if the value's there, it's easier to spend money on something that's not valuable that you've always done than something that's more valuable but you've never done before.
Especially if you're a W-2. And your job isn't to rock the boat. You're just there to get the checklist done or, that kind of thing. I mean, so often we meet with clients that the opportunity is so obvious to us, but to them, I think they're just a little scared to go first.
Yeah.
No, this is so new. No one in your category has done it yet, which is a great thing. But they're like, I don't know if it's a great thing because, well, look, it's worked over here and here and here and here and here and here. But it's like analogous to you, but it's still like, well, we got to, budget wasn't there for it. It's a new idea. We got to wait till next fiscal year. I got to run it up the ladder. We got to talk with a committee,
and the
it's
more,
just a risk.
Yeah, the
in their
more
mind.
money that somebody is responsible for, like the bigger the budget pool that they're responsible for, the easier the better they are at making those decisions and
Yeah.
recognizing value. Like the person who makes $5,000 decisions is going to like fret over spending anything that's $5,000 up to $5,000. The guy
Right.
that makes $1 million decisions, he makes those very quickly.
Yep.
And he has a good sense of like what's valuable.
I feel like their decision matrix is totally different with regard to like, oh
Yeah.
I want to take these two ideas Craig's dropped across the span of time since we've known you. A while back, I don't know if it was on the first Creative Table episode or if it was just in a lunch or breakfast, but you mentioned that you like to talk to a client and say, hey, when we do things like this, it typically falls within this range. If that feels good, let's keep talking. And that's a good way to kind of feel it out. And I love that. And we try to use that when we can. But I love pairing that with what you just said of like, okay, great. So in my mind, I'm interpreting this. You tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So we're going to make this widget for you. Does that do you have a budget that already kind of fits this widget? And what is that? Or is this like you got to make a new budget for this new widget?
Yeah.
So like, that's a good question to ask somebody.
And where are you in your budget cycle? Like, is your new budget start in 4 months? And so our job is to spend the next 4 months of you building a case for why to add this into the new budget, or are you?
And then
did
are
you
you
just
doing-
started a month ago and we're totally screwed,
Right.
or you got to go fight for special permission allocation, in which case the value has to be probably even higher.
One of the things we've recognized in ourselves, and I think it kind of points a spotlight to the problem, is like, think about movies, right? Studios from way back in the day, all the way up to even indies, if you get funding or whatever. At some point, somebody says, you've got $10 million to make this movie.
Yeah.
You got $5 million, or you got $200 million.
Yeah.
Your job is to cram as much excellence into that as you can, right? And you're responsible for how you do it. But at the end of the day, you're backing into a budget. And so I think that's probably why we come up with this mentality. Like when we're talking to clients, we're like, hey, so do you already have a budget? Because we're really good at backing into budgets. If you tell us you've got 35, we will give you
tell you what you can do for that.
Yeah. But it seems like so often nobody wants to like share that, or maybe they don't know.
Well, here's what I think. I think people, they know, but they sometimes don't realize that they know. So I'll have this conversation.
It's funny
with
how they find out real quick once you put a whole proposal together. They're like, "Oh, we know now."
That's why I stopped spending time putting the proposals together.
Yeah, we could talk a whole episode about that. Yeah.
Because somebody will say, "Well, I mean, there's somebody that I was talking to, and they were like, well, this is very well funded, and we want the best. So yeah, we don't worry about that." And eventually, I said, "Okay, this is going to cost." I don't know. I think it was like $50,000-$60,000. I said, that just so you know that it's going to be in that range. I just want to make. And this person was so offended. She said, like the highest budget I have, like the highest proposal I have so far is $4,000. And I was like, hey, no worries. We're not the right fit for you. If that's the budget range you're working in, let me recommend this contractor. This is probably the best. You probably shouldn't go to a company. You probably should find a contractor. So, but all the time people will say, we don't have a budget. Okay, well, just so you know, projects like this usually are in this range. I just want to make sure that we're in the right ballpark. And they'll say, oh, yeah. Or they'll be like, no, we are not. Okay, cool. Well, we were thinking the ballpark's going to be 75 to 100. Well, I said I didn't know what the budget is, but it's definitely not more than 25. Okay, cool. Here's what I could do for 25, or if you need all that for that, we're probably not the right fit.
There needs to be a lead generator little PDF you guys put out about how to get to the bottom line quickly and gracefully tell them no.
It saves everybody a lot of time. And how do I help? I mean, hopefully my mindset is always, how do I help them get what they want and need? Yeah. And if that's not me, that's fine. The goal isn't to try to fit our company into everybody's, know.
And you guys sometimes do that little deal we just talked about over an email. It doesn't even have to be a conversation.
Yeah, because you can go on and you can say, all right, I can quickly look at, if it's a company address, you can go look online at their. My big thing I look for is how many people work there and what industry are they in, and I can get a general sense for like what their revenue probably is, or you can find out they just received a bunch of, maybe they're small, but they just got $10 million of funding, and this is probably something they're going to do a part of it, or they just got acquired by this PE firm. And so all those things are little context clues that I want to walk into a conversation with to understand, you know, hey, if you're, we just don't work with a lot of small, unfunded, bootstraps, smaller companies. So if you're a 5-person company, cool. I don't want to waste a lot of your time, and it's not even about my time. I can waste my time, but and I don't want to waste my time. But it's less. My mindset is less about that, and it's more about like, how can I quickly help you get to what you're looking to what you need.
That's great. Yeah, you're just being a conduit, just being helpful, and whether you work together or not, you're serving them.
Yeah,
that's great, man. I had a question. I wanted. Cadence for engaging clients who are a good fit, but are moving like a cruise ship versus a speedboat, obviously. Sometimes, I mean, personally, like on our side, we'll be talking with clients, a rich opportunity. It seems to fit everything we've discussed here. And then there's that whole thing where they'll just, of course, go away. Everybody gets busy. And then you've got to follow up, and then you follow up, and then it delay. I mean, do you just stay on the, I'm getting a little in the weeds, but do you just stay on the, the friendly, once a month check in, or do you eventually say, hey, looks like this isn't going to work out, and you just pull the rug? Or do you, like, how do you know when to keep pushing, or when it's like, hey, this isn't going to.
Yeah. I mean, I think generally if it's starting to feel weird to me, it's probably feeling weird to them. So me sending another email saying like, hey, just checking in, how's that thing going? So either I can, just send them something that could be valuable to them, and we'll see if they respond, or I'm not shy at all about saying, hey, seems like, is this project, literally my favorite email, I got this from somebody, I forget where, but is just sending a short note, just says, hey, is this project dead? That's it. I don't give any warm up. I don't even close out. I'll just say, hey, Andy, is this project dead? And I can usually get a response from that. And they'll just say like, hey, yeah, it is. I'm so sorry. Because I think that they
we might use that today.
Note to self.
if my longer version of it is just saying like, hey, I'm not sure if you've even, if this project is just in a perpetual holding pattern, or if you're even still doing it. Should I keep this on my radar? And that gives them the freedom, because they don't want to come back and like make your day bad and say like, hey, dude, this is over, but like we can all kind of feel it when it's not, jiving. And so I'll just say, hey, should I keep this on my radar? And I'll have had people that will have not responded to the like 2 emails previous. And I send that like, hey, or not even asking, like, I'm just assuming you figured something else out. You don't need this anymore. It was great to meet. Hope we meet down the road. And they'll often be like, I'll get the email quickly back, like within an hour. Like, hey, no. Sorry. I've been like, please don't take this off your radar. Like, we're still, want to talk about this. I'm just working on X, Y, Z. So it helps me. And if they never respond to that note, then it's like, cool, that's an answer. I learned something from it. I don't need to, they don't have to physically tell it to me. I can read between the lines. That's okay.
Yeah.
Part of the psychology we've recognized in ourselves in regard to all of that in the last 5 years of the business, especially the creative business, because the marketing dollars are some of the first that get cut. A lot of the experimental marketing dollars that might be in Atlas Interactive get cut quick. Like just the psychology of like, am I operating from a place of like, I want their business or I need their business? And we've seen in ourselves seasons where it's like, I need the business, so I'm going to follow up more. I really need to land this, because, hey, payroll is coming. The light's got to stay on, those things. Operating from a position of, I guess, fear or weakness.
Scarcity.
Scarcity versus enough. And like, it does. What I'm always fear, right, is if I operate from that place in a season and then I'm out of that season and there's work, I don't want to psychologically still approach it from a place of scarcity and fear. I don't know if you've ever wrestled with that.
Well, I always want to say any of those notes, like, hey, I'm totally fine if you're just not going to do this project anymore, or if you decided we're not a fit. And I always want to say that, like, hey, we're okay if, or we're fine if, like, don't feel like you're going to ruin my day by telling me this. Because again, it's about giving them the freedom to tell me the truth about what's going on, so they don't feel awkward about it. And then at the end of the day, that's why, That's why we try to talk to lots of different people, because a lot of projects will go away, and so if it's not going to happen, I want to learn that sooner than later, so I can move on and focus my energy on something that's going to actually materialize.
Dude, that bears repeating. Like, gives them the permission to close the door. Because you're right. You don't, I think, realize, even though, we generally track a lot of our productive time as much as, we can automatically do it.
Yeah.
And it sheds light on where we're spending time, but like the mental time of holding on to a client project that may or may not ever come to fruition.
Yeah.
We don't account for that mental taxation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So cutting it off, cutting the line is probably actually ironically better.
Yeah. And I have this just personal rule for myself that if there's ever, I don't want to ever have run into somebody at the grocery store and have it be super awkward. Now, this can apply to a lot of different things. This can deal with conflict. This can deal with whatever. But I'm like, if I ran into this, potential client at the grocery store this afternoon, would they try to avoid me because of this situation, or would I want to avoid them? And so what do I need to do?
Yeah.
So that hey, it's totally fine if this thing's over. Just let me know, and then I can run. And then they're like, yeah, it is. Then we run into each other at the grocery store. Hey, good to see you. And again,
That's so
have
good.
I ever run into a client at the grocery store? No. But that's just my mental kind of filter.
I love that. In fact, now's a good time to ask, Craig, is this project dead?
Yes.
Just go ahead. That's why you came to in case I run into somebody on a podcast.
If it was,
room.
I probably would have avoided your call if there was something awkward, right? And I wouldn't be, or I'd come up with an excuse to not be here today.
Craig's like, I had the opportunity to go to the dentist, so I had to take that instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, some of this stuff has just got all kinds of ideas and thoughts going through my mind. I made a few notes for myself, but we're talking about, is this project dead, et cetera. Sometimes, and especially in a creative services business, I know a lot of creatives out there can identify with this. You want to move forward. The deadline is there, but there's all these moving parts. And so you're left with this sort of, am I going to bend the rules and get started on this project that I know is going to come, that they need to come, but they're waiting on a couple final checks on the whatever, paperwork, we'll call it. Sometimes we do literally say we move at the speed of paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
But
Copyright
do you
2025 Form Films, all rights reserved.
Do you ever find yourself breaking that and just going, okay, I'm going ahead now and going to start creative development, or I'm going to move into pre-production on this X, Y, and Z for this project, knowing that we need to do that now in the interest of meeting the deadline to serve the client, and the paperwork will come in the middle. I know a lot of companies will sort of sometimes that paradigm will sway and they'll bend that, and then we'll start work before we sign the papers. Or are you guys now at this place where no, we don't do anything until that agreement is signed, regardless if it blows your deadline or not?
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the situation with our business. Sometimes I need that as an excuse, because we're booked solid for the next 2 months. So I just keep telling them, dude, I can't, I've got a 8-week ramp up period, and and that clock starts when this contract is signed, but if we have somebody if we're in a season where we've got a couple people that don't have something to do, that, they're going to sit around and not get paid. Well, why don't I go ahead and take the risk that this project doesn't happen and go ahead and get them started on it? And then, I literally, in 21 years, I don't think I have ever had a project not happen because some sort of a contract disagreement. So I'm like, that's 21 years of history of that happening. I'm sure it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had about once every couple years, somebody tries to not pay us, but we typically can work through that. So it just depends on, or it's like, hey, this is a client that, is this a client's going to be a one-time client and we think they're going to be a pain in the butt? Or is this a client we've had for 5 years and this is a big, really important thing for them in their career? I'm going to help them out in this situation because they've been good to me. I want to continue to extend goodwill. Or, hey, something already smells fishy about this,
Right.
Yeah, we're not going to get started.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends.
It's definitely rare.
Yeah.
But things can get snagged up in the contract phase that could lead to we're halfway down the field on this work, and now the attorneys are coming back with some new provisions that are impossible to agree to, and we're in an impasse, and that gets messy.
Yeah, well,
So,
and then it comes back to risk. Like which is riskier for me, signing this with the terms that their attorney wants, or not
Right.
doing the work?
yep.
Like there's always trade-offs.
Yeah.
And which risk do I want to take? Not. Yeah.
100%. You got anything to add to that before?
So Matchstick was a client that didn't pay you, just took the artwork and made it your company then. Just said, well, we might as well use this logo. So
Yeah. Might as well.
it's here.
Yeah.
Who came up with that name, by the way? Was that Blake or you or?
That was Blake. He just was like, yeah, we when we started the first little bit, we were really kind of two separate entities that collaborated on things together. And so he just came up with Matchstick.
And the tagline came at the exact same time the name did, or did the Start Fires?
Oh no, that came years later.
Yeah.
But I said, why is it not the K? And he's like, I don't really like the way it looks, and I couldn't get the .com. So
I knew it. It's like always the case, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, whatever. But technically, I guess it breaks one of your rules. Like, does it pass the stoplight test? Where can you yell out the name and have someone correctly know what it is without? But you gotta. I mean, do you have to say? I mean, I imagine you don't anymore. But I guess in the beginning you would have to say Matchstick without the K.com.
Oh yeah. I mean, every time I'm telling somebody my email address over the phone,
Yeah.
it's Matchstick without the K. Yeah. STIC.com. Yeah. Well, yeah. MAT.
Yeah.
But listen, my last name is
Yeah.
Johnson, and people still
Yeah.
are like, did you say Johnston? I'm like, no. Like, it's
Johnstown. Yeah. But we're in
the
the era
most
too where
normal last name ever.
we're in that era now where people are kind of used to business names that make no sense and they drop all the vowels.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
That's like a trend that
That's
was
cool now.
3 or 4 years ago. But
Yeah. In fact, I feel like we kind of date ourselves now by even having our name.com, because
wow.
almost no marketing agency has just their name.com anymore if they were starting the last 10 years.
Right. Do you like .io or what's your
Yeah.
favorite?
I don't know if I have a favorite. I mean, I've seen .agency,
.studio.
yeah. There's
we
all
did
sorts
we did
of things.
formcast.studio for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
It obviously fit,
Yeah.
but just to market it for clients to come and use.
Yeah. Side note, this is available. If you're watching, you're like, that looks cool. I wish I could do that. You can.
It's a great setup.
Space.
I love it.
Thanks,
Talk
buddy.
about what you love, Craig. Just no.
I walk in and I'm like, gosh, you guys really know what you're doing. It's like all the attention to detail is unbelievable.
This is a good time to highlight we couldn't do it without some of the brains behind the operation. Go to that BTS shot, Eric. Give him a little love back there.
Eric the engineer. It's kind of like Thomas the Tank Engine. If you have little kids.
There it is. So, man, one of the things from day one that I've always loved about Matchstick is the process. And I don't even know what the process is, but it came through people telling me, dude, I went with this company and I went with this company. And I went with this company and went with Matchstick, and they both do incredible work, but Matchstick crushed the other company on process. It's buttery smooth the way they've got it laid out. And that was like, dude, that was 10 years ago. So I can't imagine it's probably just pure liquid now, whatever's slicker than butter. I mean,
Well, we're always trying to evolve it. And,
can you give me without this, without exposing
The
any
secret recipe.
Can you give me
there's nothing secret about it. Like we
Well,
can
it's-
just bleep
it's
it out. Probably on our website. We stole it from a book that somebody else wrote. That
Sure, everybody
go
right.
buy Designing Brand Identity. The book, and
Alina?
yeah,
Alina
Alina
Wheeler,
Wheeler,
yeah.
who rest in peace. She passed away about a year and a half ago.
Man,
but
no. Didn't know that.
yeah, Rob has taken over that book now. They released the last one together, and so he's now taken over the franchise, so to speak. But I mean, that book was like the Bible, and I think our process is like just a tiny little tweak on what's in that book, but it's really just. I think more than our process is discovery, strategy, identity, launch. But it's less about that.
Yep.
And it's more about, every meeting coming to the table and the client feels like you're a couple steps ahead of them, and and you're leading the conversation. If you're getting in the room saying like, hey, so we were thinking about this today. I don't know. What do you want to do? I think that's when people say they like process, I think my hunch is they like to be led, and they want somebody to, and that just speaks of like, gosh, they are experts, and I don't have to worry. People will tell me all the time, I'm just worried that I don't know every single thing, and to tell you the right way. So you're not, and I'm like, don't worry about that. The impetus is on us to get out of you everything that we need in order to do it right. So if you feel like I'm cooking a meal in your house, but you don't have all the right ingredients, that's not your job. If there's something that I feel like needs to be there, I will tell you beforehand, and I'll make sure we have it before I make the meal.
Yep.
That's great advice.
Yeah, it really is. I feel like we excel on the production side with process, but we're always trying to tweak on the business side. I had a buddy of mine a year or two ago tell me he started calling every client of his on Friday, calling or sending a thorough like email. It was basically like, here's what we worked on this week for you. Here's what's coming up next week that we'll have done. Let me know if there's any questions. Basically just a small touch point.
Yeah.
And it just created this sense of like comfort and clarity for, of course, the client on their side to go, gosh, I'm not wondering. I was about to email, but now I don't have to, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he said it's been great for him because he got tired of clients going, hey, where are we at with this? And then feeling behind.
That's stressful.
That you always feel like, another, quasi like ball drop there. And it is a difference. It's small effort, but big difference between, I'll say, the amateur and the professional, or the professional and the elite.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like the Navy SEAL versus like just the soldier,
Yeah. Another little thing I picked up, I actually stole this from a client like many years ago, but was calling. I found the difference in like, if I can call the client or text, nowadays it's like maybe texting a couple days before the presentation and just say like, dude, I just want you to know, I just saw the work that you're going to see in 2 days and it is unbelievable. Like you are going to be so blown away. Like just something that tells them like, oh my gosh, it's amazing the difference in what they walk into that meeting with versus like there's been silence for the last 2 weeks, and then they walk in cold.
I love that.
That kind of reminds me, like we would tell whoever our point person was at company XYZ, like, hey, our job is to make you look amazing.
Yeah.
Like we want you to be amazing to your bosses.
Absolutely.
And if we, then you're on, we're on the red speed phone, like pick it up and,
I mean, the number of times, like my favorite things that happen, and I see it a good bit, is within like a year of us taking, a client through a project like this, our main point of contact gets some sort of a promotion or, significant, career advancement on the back end of it, having led a really successful engagement like that. And that's like the ultimate win, because that means like people don't just hand those things out. They're there when the value is proven, and then that's attributed to the person who led it. And if we can make them look good and advance,
there's already high
career,
trust. They don't have to reinvent and figure it out from scratch. They know you.
Yeah,
they're ready to go.
And then sometimes those folks change gigs and they won't experience that again. So they'll
go
back
to another company and they still call you.
That's what I mean. They change jobs, and they're like, hey, I remember who helped me, advance my career last time. Let's do that again.
That's amazing.
I love that, dude. I'm hearing what you're saying about process and this sort of excellence and these small chiropractic adjustments you can make. I'm wondering how much of that over years, of course, feeds into that radically relevant brand that people remember and circle back to and refer their friends. Chick-fil-A calls it the raving fan, right? That comes often, pays full price, and tells their friends. So that's the raving fan that you want to kind of build with your business. But that tips over into more or less marketing that you have to do. I mean, do you guys stay full court press on marketing nowadays, or do you kind of pull back and just focus on that? Everybody, obviously, I mean, Nike, everybody knows Nike, but Nike still markets, of course. But like, where do you guys land on that? Are you always prospecting, or do you find that now mostly, I'd say over the years, that's kind of gone down, and maybe what used to be 75% of is now 50 to 25% of.
No, if anything, we're trying to ramp it up and trying to figure it out. And what is I think the big challenge is, and I can put sales and marketing in the same thing, because I think that different organizations are, I see it in clients all the time. Some of them are really marketing heavy and sales light. Some are really sales heavy and marketing light. Some organizations, there's a VP of sales and marketing, and really is a VP of sales, but he has some marketing person that reports to him, and that person basically just like makes their PowerPoints. So it's different for every organization, but trying to figure out what is what can we intentionally do that we can then draw a line to, like that created another opportunity or another client. And I think if I'm honest, like we're trying to still poke around with that and figure it out. Because there's a lot of things we do that I think that as a branding shop, a lot of times we think marketing is just good branding, and it's not. Those are two very different things. And so, having a great website.
Might need to unpack that thought a little bit.
Well, like,
why is it marketing, branding, or talk?
Well, they're different things. Like I think branding is like, what's your identity? Who are you?
Yep.
How do you talk about yourself? What's that whole image? What's your name? What's your tagline? All that stuff. And maybe, website is probably one of those things that's some sort of a blend of branding and marketing, because there's definitely branding, like a brand that's expressed on a website. But ultimately, a website is about, trying to lead a client to a decision. And so and then there's a lot of other marketing things that are like, hey, how are we going to get more leads into the top of the sales pipeline, right? Are we going to do that through advertising somewhere? Are we going to do that through sponsorship? Are we going to do that through just sending a sales guy on the road to meet with people, going to conferences? Are we going to do that through Google ads? Or, so there's just so many things that you can do. And as brand folks, we just think, well, build it and they will come. Like, our work is amazing and everybody's going to want to just throw all their money at us. And
wait, that's not true?
No, it's not true. Now, but I will say case studies are probably one of the most important things, because at the end of the day, somebody's question is like, can you do this? And the biggest proof that you can do it is that you've done it before. And they want to see that you've done it for somebody that's similar to them, right? And all of this is about lowering risk. For the person who's making this decision. What are the risks? The risk is they don't know what they're talking about. They haven't done it before, or they think that, they've done it for all these companies, but our company's different. And so they don't understand,
That is a thing we constantly come up against.
Yeah.
I'd love your opinion on this, because the other day we had somebody say, I'd love to see what your Atlas technology could do, but in the FinServ space. Or like, take the flooring finder and change it to FinServ. Like, it just seems like, picture yourself like it's a different product, but it's the same idea. But people have a really hard time getting their head around that. So sometimes we'll even do little mock-ups that show like, hey, are you ready to schedule your oil change? Because we want a car manufacturer to get the use case in their world.
Right.
How does that translate for you, like making logos or branding or color schemes? Or like, do you have to put it in their world for them to get it?
Well, it probably means I'm willing to make more concessions to get, if it's an industry we haven't worked in before.
Yeah.
I'd got to know it's a harder road to win it. And I got to decide, how important is it to win this? And do we think that we can grow this as a sector that we can do more work in? If so, I got to be willing to concede, probably, bottom line, they can probably push me down on price a little bit more,
Yeah.
But if it's an industry I don't care to get in, I'll just say, nope, we've never done it before. Here's the price, take it or leave it. And they'll either
Here's
take
a couple
it.
samples that are analogous to what you're trying to do.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're always looking for, like, we had a movie theater chain that came to us, and that's out west, and we launched the brand. It was an awesome project. Have we ever done a movie theater before? Heck no. But they were a very, like, a family-owned company that, like, they're very much a values-led organization.
Yep.
And so we could say, hey, we haven't worked for, a movie house before, a movie theater, but we did do work for this, movie studio where people film movies. And by the way, that's owned by a very values-led family company that they knew. And so they were like, that gave them a lot of comfort of, like, it was more for them, less that we knew movies and more that we knew what it's like to work with a privately owned, large, family, values-based company. And so it's always like looking for
the common ground.
The analogy might be outside the art. It might be we've worked with companies with 400 to 500 employees that are privately owned, yada, yada.
Yeah. And so I always say, like, I want to always want to show them an example that's in their industry. And then I want to show them an example that's a similar situation or problem that we're solving. Because
you're showing, when you say example, you mean case study.
Case study. Yeah. And again, we do put a lot of money into our case studies. I think case studies are really more, I mean, there's some marketing to them, but they're really almost more like brand assets and sales tools than they are marketing.
Can't emphasize that enough. I know one point in the past you've told me like, freelancer A can give you a logo. Matchstick can give you the logo, but it comes with certainty. It was like, how much is certainty worth? You put it in a succinct way like that, like, how much are you willing to pay for?
You're more confident
for
in the
certainty
result through Matchstick than just
Joe there's a strategy there. There's a
that's
there's a
why
certainty there. There's less risk. There's a whole other. I love that idea of just circle that word certainty. This partnering around this idea of, hey, all of us are here to create certainty for the client, and that's what they're hiring us for. Ultimately, the base level idea is that I could go hire an artist, but like you guys are doing something bigger than that.
This is why, do I buy the name brand, canned peas at the store, or do I buy the branded ones? And somehow this dumb mental thing, or the best example is like salt, I can buy the Publix brand salt, or I have the Morton salt that's like, 50% more, and it's got the dumb little girl with the salt
Cute
thing.
little girl.
Cute little girl. Yeah. I know. It's
sweet.
It's cute.
Innocent.
I'm saying it's dumb because I'm dumb because I'm like 1,000. I don't know this, but I would bet a lot of money that those came out of the exact same factory. They just threw them into different packages at the end, but somehow
there's a certainty.
There's a little bit more trust and certainty with the Morton salt. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I just want to know, why does salt have an expiration date when it's lived in the ground for billions of years?
I didn't know that. I never even noticed that.
I think basically any product has to have that for the lawyers. Hashtag the lawyers.
Otherwise, how are you going to throw it away and buy more?
Right.
Oh,
yeah. Salt's
it's like the blue.
salty.
Oh, it's the blue line on the toothbrush. That's like, how do we get more toothbrushes sold?
Oh, yeah.
Let's put this artificial blue line on there that deteriorates over time, and that magically becomes when you need a new toothbrush.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, got it. Okay. Okay, so you guys are all about, you're in you're specialized in service. Do you have any products? Have you gotten into products like separating time from income kind of model? I know you got a book out, of course, but that.
Yeah, the book is really still about trying to sell more services.
Yes.
I mean, I have just kind of accepted like this. We're in a service-based business, and we toss around ideas.
I mean, you've been around long enough to certainly put out some master classes on this stuff and just start. If only you knew a good production company that you're friends with. I mean, you
know
could really
some guys right down the street.
You're in luck.
You're in luck.
Yeah.
Seriously. Let's scale this baby. No.
Yeah. I mean, we get product ideas, but there's always like, okay, are we gonna hire, extra people who are gonna work on that? Do we really believe in it? Do we understand how to build a product like this? Do we want to be in that business? I think it's hard to be in two different businesses. And there's always the the best story, is MailChimp, and they were building websites and they created this little mail platform, and then they a year later looked back and like, wait, there's how many subscribers to that thing? Like, maybe we should just do that.
I'm not familiar actually with their full story. So
they were building websites. They were building websites for people, and there wasn't a mail program that they liked, and so they just created that on the side, and then, a few years later sold it for $12 billion. No big deal. Privately held, right? No additional investors, two 50-50 owners. Unbelievable.
Wow.
That's sort of like mine and Kevin's story here at Form.
Yeah.
Wait.
Except it was
$13
billion.
Yeah.
It's very close
$1
with that small
billion
difference.
Well, and of course you want to romanticize that from a distance, like, oh, they just did it and it was easy.
It just made a thing.
No, those guys were freaking like,
they were
smart
up all
as
night every
anything.
night busting.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you read that book, Delivering Happiness.
Yeah.
Like Tony Hsieh. Is it Tony Hsieh?
Yeah.
Dude, the story of him like driving across country to make that shoe delivery and like pouring water on his face because he had to make the meeting. I mean, there's incredible. I mean, you see it in the Nike movie. What is it called? Air.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. Like how these, you look at the company like, man, it's just, how do they do that? No, it's just people grinding it out and like going with their gut in some cases and betting it all. And it's like, it's insane. Blackberry, that movie.
Or like War Dogs when they drove all those pistols across.
Oh my gosh. That movie is crazy.
Isn't that great?
Dude, I still have not seen it. I have to watch it. I just know some funny scenes from the film.
We talk all the time about the Pentagon meeting. Remember when they come when he's like,
gosh.
So
wait. Let's go back to, you said, but how much were we underneath?
How far? Oh, you boys were $35 billion under. And he's like,
Yeah.
Dude,
You
that's
guys
how we
came
feel
in
all the
$50
time.
million less than the next,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. it's the story
Well,
of
and
our
I
lives.
forget too that, when Michael Jordan signed to Nike, I mean, Converse was they were the big, because we just think Nike's always been the big, powerful shoe brand. But like Converse, I mean, the Converse weapons, do you remember the Converse weapon? I mean, Bird wore
I do
them.
not. I do
Magic
not.
Johnson
I mean, I know
wore
what they look
them.
like.
Like they were.
I didn't know they were called weapons. Is
Yeah.
that-
Yeah, I don't remember that, but
Yeah. It could be wrong.
There's probably some baby photo of Craig laying around at 3 years old with the little Converse weapons
my
on.
older brother had the Magic Johnson Converse weapons. They were
Okay.
like purple and yellow, and I was like, those are the coolest shoes ever.
dang, that's cool.
Dude, when I was growing up, it was the pump. Remember that? What,
Oh, yeah.
What was that
Yeah,
little
yeah, the
pump? Was it
Reebok
Reebok?
pump. Yeah.
Reebok pumps,
They
dude?
tried to bring it back a couple years ago. It did not.
I know. Today's generation's
Go
probably
too
not
well.
going for it. But,
There's some 90s nostalgia right now. That I
dude, do
can't
you remember
figure
British
out.
Knights? Remember those?
Oh,
They were like a
BKs.
flat,
BK.
dude.
My cousin always wore them because he had fat feet, and they were the
They
only
were like a
shoes he could
flash
wear
in the pan.
fat
They were
feet
hot
with.
for a minute there.
Yeah, I never had those.
Yeah,
Were these old
I
Gen
just
Xers
stuck with my
Knights.
stride rights when I was a kid. Styling in my
I had my
strides.
Ruse. Remember Ruse that came with like a nickel
Oh.
in the pocket? I just
Yeah,
thought that was
that's
so
cool.
cool. Thought
You
I was
lost me
fast
on
with the
that.
Ruse. Walter Payton wore the Ruse. Remember Ruse had a big kangaroo logo?
Oh, okay. I was totally not connecting.
ROOS.
Ruse with kangaroo. Gotcha.
I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this again, it's just interesting to think about. Walter Payton was the best running back, in the NFL, and that was his shoe brand. It sounds silly now.
Yeah. I kept thinking of Underoos. Like
Yeah.
that. Anyway.
No,
I had some of
I
those
had
as
some
well.
of those too. I had some of those too.
I had Batman, Superman. I had them all.
Dude.
Like old school, like Adam West level Batman.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, you got anything else here? I feel like, Eric, how long have we been going?
This is awesome.
Really is. That's
Oh,
what I
wow.
thought.
Let's
I was
wrap.
feeling,
Yeah.
I was feeling like we had to have hit an hour, but
Craig,
at
you
the
got
same
any
time,
last thoughts? Because
No, this is great.
I mean, if I didn't have to, go hit the restroom, I'd be like, we just keep going.
well, thank you
this
for
is
coming
fun.
back. Thank you for always being willing to share and speak into other creatives and helping us get this thing kicked off for another round of creative. I want to have you come back and do like little micro versions of this. We don't cover the whole story. We just go, let's talk to Craig about what's up. So
Yeah.
thank
Great.
you. Thank
well,
you.
thanks for
And
having me and asking me questions to make me feel smart.
Yes, that's our job.
Yeah.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. Thank you for joining us.
And Craig, if you know anyone else that you would like to refer over to needs to have this conversation or sit and share what they do,
Ooh,
we'd love
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
We'd
Great.
like to kind of do the ice water challenge version of like, who are you going to nominate to come sit in the chair,
I like it.
Yeah,
It doesn't just need to be who people we know.
I like it. Yeah.
So be fun. All right. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Like Andy said, like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.